It was unavoidable, but the 6 months I spent in the hospital were extremely painful. My muscles had clearly weakened. I wanted to find peace in my own home as soon as possible. However, when Chris and I returned home, we were greeted by a mountain of our mother-in-law Sharon and sister-in-law Dolly's belongings. What is this? What happened here? This wasn't here in the morning. Sharon and Dolly's belongings were supposed to be temporarily stored. I was told everything would be cleared out by the time I was discharged. Well, this is our house now, so if you don't like it, you should leave. Exactly. Sick person is a nuisance, so please leave. Unbelievable. This wasn't the agreement, and this is mine and Chris's house. Seeing me stunned, Sharon and Dolly burst out laughing. We were both shocked and disappointed. I couldn't stand it anymore. I'm really sick of Sharon and Dolly's irresponsible actions. Chris seemed to feel the same way. It was evident on his face. We looked at each other and nodded. Let's leave this place. Yes, let's do that. I'm done with these unpleasant feelings. There's no need to put up with Sharon and Dolly's selfish behavior. Chris and I decided to go ahead with the plan we had been considering. I am Anita. I'm 31 years old and work for a company that manufactures surveying equipment. Chris and I married at 30 after 2 years of workplace romance. Both work and married life are going well, and I'm living fulfilling days. However, interactions with my mother-in-law Sharon and sister-in-law Dolly can sometimes be stressful. Both mother and daughter have very bad personalities. It's hard to believe that Chris is related to them by blood. Through Sharon and Dolly, I have experienced numerous hardships. Today, I plan to talk about various events from that period. After we got married, Chris and I were entrusted with managing a house from my maternal uncle. My uncle, who has no spouse or children and is elderly, lives in a facility. Since the house would be empty, we were advised to live there and eventually inherited it. The house is old but has many rooms, which was nice. The problem is that it's not far from Chris's parents' house. It's about a 30-minute drive. Because it's relatively close within the same city, we started being called to his parents' house every weekend. Initially, I thought that was natural, a kind of rite of passage. I thought it was just treated as a family event and that we would eventually be left alone. However, the reality was different. Mother-in-law Sharon began to use me as her legs and purse, regularly calling me out every holiday. I'm sorry, Anita, but my back hurts and I can't move freely. Yes, that's fine. What else could I have answered? There was a need to go to the hospital. Shopping at the supermarket was also necessary. I forgot my wallet. It's a financially tight month. She used those excuses to exploit me. I drove the car as instructed and prepaid at various stores as requested. Gradually, Sharon began to take my efforts for granted and became increasingly arrogant. Whenever I slightly object or resist, she acts as if she is the victim. Why do you look so dissatisfied? It's just a little call. You are a daughter-in-law, it's natural for you to serve your mother-in-law. You understood that when you got married, didn't you? I told you I had plans this week. It's unfair to call me despite that. If you don't like it, you should refuse. Since you came, it couldn't have been that important, right? Even if we are not related by blood, you should prioritize your parents. Gradually, Sharon lost her restraint towards me and started to use me for house cleaning and preparing lunch. She also ordered me to replace the sliding doors, weed the garden, and clean the gutters. Although Sharon complains of back pain, its authenticity is uncertain. I wouldn't have been surprised if it was just an excuse to exploit me. There is a particularly memorable interaction with Sharon. It's about the time we found a bug in the kitchen. Not just me, Sharon also detested that bug immensely. Upon seeing it, she would scream like a child and move about 33 feet away. The same reaction occurred that day. When I exclaimed, a bug? Sharon screamed and fled the kitchen. Deal with it quickly. Get rid of it. Unbelievable. It's Anita's fault. At my fault? How does that make sense? Because it is. It's because Anita hasn't cleaned the kitchen properly. That's why the bug appeared. Deal with it quickly. Don't bring it here. I couldn't help but sigh. Isn't she responsible at all who lives here regularly? Blaming me, who is only here on weekends, is just putting herself above reproach. Not only Sharon, but my sister-in-law Dolly, who lives with her, is terrible too. Dolly is a divorced woman who returned to her original home about 3 years ago after her husband cheated on her. She loves cigarettes, gambling, and alcohol much like a middle-aged man. She is always irritated, and dealing with her is painful. Especially problematic is her change into an uncontrollable personality when drunk. Behaving violently. Dolly, who throws things around and causes trouble, is a great nuisance to everyone around her. It seems she is deeply dissatisfied with her situation since her divorce. She tried to drown her frustrations in alcohol. It's really troublesome. When Chris was away on a business trip over the weekend, I often received calls from Sharon about Dolly. Anita, Dolly has called from the bar. Can you come pick her up? Do I need to go? Shouldn't she take a taxi? It seems she's run out of money. Besides, it sounds like she's caused trouble at the bar. Reluctantly, I headed to the bar where I found Dolly completely drunk. When I told the staff that I was her family, they all looked troubled. Drunk Dolly had broken dishes, messed up the food, and caused trouble for other customers. As a result, many customers left, which not only affected the day's sales but also damaged the establishment. Later, a significant amount of compensation was demanded, and both Sharon and Dolly were unable to hide their surprise. There were multiple calls from the police to pick up Dolly. I became well acquainted with the local officers. There are countless issues and bitter incidents related to Dolly. She really is a problematic person. When Sharon teams up with her, these types of problems multiply. When Chris is away, they constantly complain to me. Perhaps due to the familiarity of our relationship, their intrusive nature began to show more and more. Even in close relationships, etiquette is required, but Sharon and Dolly seem to care little about this. Chris also seems to be struggling under the influence of his mother and sister. Just a moment, Chris, could you lend me about $1,000? Money again, and $1,000 at that. What for? I'm taking mom to a spa. Is there a problem with that as a son? Chris, is it okay for mom's back to stay like this? Sharon and Dolly often demanded money from Chris. The purpose was to visit hot springs or spas under the pretext of Sharon's health. It's truly brazen. Chris and I are overwhelmed with work and hardly have the leisure to enjoy holidays. On the other hand, Sharon and Dolly, who do not work, were living relatively comfortably. I am not satisfied with this situation. During weekdays, I am busy with work, and on weekends, I have to respond to the demands of Sharon and Dolly at their home. This routine was causing significant stress to both my body and mind. Before I knew it, my health was deteriorating. I couldn't recover from fatigue even with rest, and I constantly felt gloomy. Even when I had time to relax with Chris, I was always sighing. Unlike mom, maybe Anita should also take some rest somewhere. Really, it's unusual for me to feel so tired. We need to do something about it. Chris and I hope to have children in the future, and I will soon turn 32. Ideally, I would like to have our first child in my early 30s. For that, it's necessary to maintain physical health and reduce mental stress. The sudden dizziness I felt was on a Friday night, accompanied by intense pain. With a severe headache, I couldn't even stand and express the abnormality to Chris. It was a very scary experience. I realized that my speech was becoming unclear. Chris's complexion changed. "Stay still, I'm calling an ambulance," he said hurriedly. After tests at the emergency hospital, I was diagnosed with a cerebrovascular disorder. Being diagnosed with a stroke in my 30s was a life-threatening condition if mistaken. It was fortunate that Chris was by my side and could respond immediately. I don't smoke, drink, or have issues with high blood pressure or high cholesterol. Yet why did I have a stroke? It seems even the doctors couldn't pinpoint the exact cause. It might also be because of mom and sister. Anita was always under pressure. I'm sorry, but I suspected that too. It might have been a problem that you endured it for so long. Anyway, it was fortunate that you received treatment quickly. We must regain your health as soon as possible. My hospitalization was prolonged. Due to a cerebrovascular issue, hospital stays are often long, but mine was extended further due to signs of depression. The visit from Sharon and Dolly is an unforgettable memory. Despite Chris forbidding their visits, they came without permission and said whatever they wanted. Is it true you collapsed? Come back soon. We are in trouble. That's right. There are so many things we need you to do, like washing and cleaning. Actually, I need to be hospitalized too. Look, my back pain is terrible. Get well soon and come back. Oh, we'll borrow your room while you're hospitalized, okay? Borrow the room? What on earth does that mean? After a while, Chris arrived. He was furious to see Sharon and Dolly. Hey, I said stop. Why are you in Anita's hospital room? Quiet down. Let us visit. It's only natural since we're family. And make sure to tell Anita about that thing. Okay, bye. Sharon and Dolly left quickly. Chris apologized, looking sorry. I'm sorry I couldn't stop them. I am truly amazed by the selfish behavior of Sharon and Dolly. When I asked about that thing, it turned out to be about the renovation of their family home. Remember, there was a day with very strong winds recently? The family home is old, so tiles flew off the roof, and it was damaged by debris flying around. Because of that, rain started leaking through the roof. It seems they had to call a repair service to fix the house. During the repair period, they needed to move some belongings somewhere. That's when Sharon and Dolly proposed using our house. I understand. I don't mind. I'll be in the hospital for a while anyway. Really, that helps a lot. Thank you. We'll make sure everything is cleared up before you get discharged. However, the situation was unexpected. After 6 months of hospitalization, when I returned home, there was a large amount of Sharon and Dolly's belongings there. It was unavoidable, but the 6 months I spent in the hospital were extremely painful. My muscles had clearly weakened. I wanted to find peace in my own home as soon as possible. However, when Chris and I returned home, we were greeted by a mountain of our mother-in-law Sharon and sister-in-law Dolly's belongings. Chris was also surprised on the spot. Shouldn't they have cleared everything up before I got back? What was going on? What is this? What happened here? This wasn't here in the morning. Sharon and Dolly's belongings were supposed to be temporarily stored. I was told everything would be cleared out by the time I was discharged. The movers brought them in at noon. It's fine, the house is big enough. That's right. The family home is very old, and it turned out that it was a rented house. We had to leave there and come here. Now we have no choice but to live here. So, kicking us out would be pointless. I was appalled by Sharon and Dolly's selfish behavior. To force their way in while blocking their own path. Such selfish actions should not be allowed. Chris strongly criticized this point. However, Sharon and Dolly decided to ignore it. As the argument heated up, Sharon incredibly lost her temper. Well, this is our house now, so if you don't like it, you should leave. Exactly. Sick person is a nuisance, so please leave. Unbelievable. This wasn't the agreement, and this is mine and Chris's house. Seeing me stunned, Sharon and Dolly burst out laughing. We were both shocked and disappointed by the outrageous behavior. It was unbearable. Just hearing their laughter made me feel sick to my stomach. Chris was concerned about my health, worried that it might relapse. It was truly very tough. Half a month after Sharon and Dolly started staying at our house, they began planning another trip. They said they wanted to refresh their tired bodies after cleaning up from the move. So, Chris, could you lend me another $1,000? What are you talking about? You haven't paid back the first amount. Just give it without complaining. Think of it as filial piety. Dolly insisted, but Chris firmly refused. I am really fed up with Sharon and Dolly's irresponsible behavior. It seems Chris feels the same way. It was clear on his face. Ignoring their irritation over not getting the money, we looked at each other and nodded. Let's leave this place. Yes, let's do that. I'm done with these unpleasant feelings. There's no need to put up with Sharon and Dolly's selfish behavior. Chris and I decided to go ahead with the plan we had been considering. In fact, since they moved in, we had been waiting for a time when the in-laws would be away. Without Chris giving them money, we used our savings, and Sharon and Dolly went on their trip. Afterward, we quickly started to take action. We organized the belongings, instructed the movers, and then contacted a real estate agent to decide to part with our beloved home. A call from Dolly came into my smartphone a month later. She was clearly upset, and Sharon's yelling could be heard in the background. No wonder, as the house they had lived in just a few days ago had been put on the market. What's happening? Explain. Why can't we get into the house? Where are our belongings? Explain properly. I forgot to inform you, but that house has already been sold. What? You sold it? How could you do this without permission? Why? I don't need to take such accusations. The house was registered in my name. What I do with it is my choice. What can they say after they force their way in? Neither Chris nor I ever intended to concede anything to Sharon or Dolly. I'm sorry, but aren't you the ones who created this situation, Sharon and Dolly? I did not want to sell that house. Wait, what do you mean by that? Are you saying this is our fault? Yes, exactly. The stress from you two might have contributed to my illness. Isn't it natural to want to distance ourselves? That's ridiculous. Don't bring up your illness. Can anyone truly claim that they are completely unrelated? Indeed, I was suffering because of Sharon and Dolly's actions. Dolly was still yelling on the phone. Tell me where you put the belongings, quickly. The room is empty. Our belongings should be there. Where did they go? Tell me. I won't hesitate to sue. Don't worry, your belongings are safely stored in a warehouse. Do you want them back? Of course. What are you thinking? If so, there is one condition. Please do not interfere with us anymore. If you promise not to be involved with us anymore, I will tell you where the belongings are. I have no intention of responding to any more calls or demands for money. From now on, I want to live my life in a different place with as little involvement as possible. At that proposal, Sharon, who was talking on the phone, laughed mockingly. That's absurd. I am your mother-in-law. Such ties cannot just be cut. I want to cut off the tie that supposedly cannot be cut. After that, Chris took over the phone. It seems he too had a lot to say to his mother and sister. With an unusually stern expression, he voiced his determination. Mom and sister, you went too far. You lied to me and forced the move. I've been angry since that day. I don't even want to see your faces anymore. Wait, Chris, there's no need to be so angry. What are you talking about, Chris? You're the younger brother, don't get cheeky. Don't get ahead of yourself. You're unemployed and divorced. Who do you think paid for this trip? I'm not giving you any more money. Chris's voice was furious. His fierceness was considerable. Sharon and Dolly felt the gravity of the situation this time. Let's calm down and talk, they suggested. Then they asked for details about the location of the storage and the handling of the belongings. Everything went as planned. Chris and I exchanged glances and arranged a meeting with Sharon and Dolly. 3 days later, we gathered them at a small cafe. Sharon and Dolly had been staying in a hotel for the past few days, looking pale, but they seemed to think they could still dominate us with their assertive attitude as before. We're here. Hurry up and tell us the location of the warehouse. You're also paying for the hotel stay. That's not happening. Before you say something like that, pay back the money I spent on the trip. I've spent nearly $5,000 to date. Pay it back quickly. Chris's presence was intimidating. It was hard to imagine from his usually calm demeanor. They seemed to feel that they should not anger him any further. Immediately, Sharon and Dolly softened their approach and began to smile ingratiatingly. Wait a minute. We didn't mean to make you angry. We were just a bit shocked and frustrated over a small thing. That's right. Let's talk more calmly. Don't say you want to cut ties. No, that's unacceptable. Our future as a couple is at stake. We will take this opportunity to sever ties with you. What are you saying? How can you speak to your parents like that? Chris had a stern look, but it wasn't in his nature to say such things. The problem lies with Sharon and Dolly, who have forced him to make this decision. Their actions necessitated such a drastic decision. I took over from Chris and reiterated the specific conditions to Sharon and Dolly. As we discussed before, please do not contact us or ask for money. If you can abide by this, we can tell you where the storage is. The cost of using the storage is your responsibility. Also, don't forget to repay the travel expenses. What are you saying? Don't make impossible demands. We don't have that kind of money. Do you really understand? Both my mother and I don't have jobs. Why are they so shameless? Are Sharon and Dolly truly without shame? If I were in their position, I could never speak like that. Chris was also taken aback by their unreasonable statements. There was no longer any anger in his eyes. Enough. Can you really say such things without a second thought? You really are like parasites. Become more independent, stop relying on us, and learn to support yourselves. Children normally rely on their parents for support. What do you mean by calling us parasites? Indeed, parental support is natural, and I have been doing that for years. However, there is a limit. Didn't mother and sister not only fail to do what they could, but also lied? A bug. Suddenly, when I pointed to the ground near Sharon's feet, Sharon gave a short scream and quickly got up from her seat, moving to the wall. Her agile movement didn't seem to belong to someone suffering from back pain. It seems that Sharon realized I had made up the bug. She became very angry, her face turning red. Liar. I was deceived. I'm sorry. However, isn't it mutual? You did use your back pain as a reason to make me do household chores and repairs, right? Furthermore, you fleeced me of money under the guise of treatment for the hot springs. Wasn't it for your back? Who is the real liar here? Just stop it. Sharon was unable to respond. She looked at the floor in frustration and bit her lip. Chris urged her to return to her seat, and she came back muttering her dissatisfaction. It seemed she had lost the energy to argue and was disappointed. On the other hand, Dolly was still ready to fight, anger evident in her eyes. Both of you lack respect for your elders. Stealing our belongings and threatening us, lying, ambushing, calling us parasites. I am furious. We did not want to respond in this way or tone either. As I've said before, you two have driven us to this situation. Please understand that. There's one more thing I'd like to ask. Sharon, Dolly, why don't you try working? You should be independent and support yourselves. Isn't that possible? Both of you are healthy and have no chronic illnesses. You have time and you owe me a debt. If you don't want to be called parasites, you have every reason to work. Looking at Dolly's face trembling with anger, we felt our stance was justified, but it seemed they were still not convinced. Changing Dolly's stubborn attitude might require more than just our efforts. But there was no need to rush, as everything was going according to plan. I subtly signaled to someone sitting at the back of the cafe. Responding to the signal, a man stood up and approached. As he appeared, Dolly's expression dramatically changed. The person who appeared was none other than Dolly's former husband, Tony. Indeed, Chris and I had contacted Tony in advance for this day and arranged for him to come. Tony's face lacked the warmth it once had, and it was clear that any love he had for Dolly had completely vanished. His gaze was cold as he looked sternly at Dolly and said, "Dolly, it's been a while. You still haven't changed. It's really surprising." Dolly couldn't hide her disturbance and asked Tony, "Why are you here? Did they call you? What hasn't changed?" Tony answered calmly, "It seems you're still living by deceiving others. Just like you deceived me, are you deceiving Chris and Anita too? You dishonest woman." I was shocked by his words. "Did you have an affair, Dolly?" Previously, Dolly had told us that her husband's infidelity was the reason for their divorce. However, her failure to deny Tony's accusations made it likely that his claims were true. It became clear from this situation that Dolly had been lying to us. She was the one who had an affair and caused the divorce. She was pretentious, arrogant, dishonest, and had been hiding her true nature, which was now exposed. My dislike for Dolly deepened in my heart, and I was aware of how much my feelings towards her had intensified. If you had returned to your hometown and kept quiet, I wouldn't have said anything. But Dolly, it seems you're causing trouble here too. Dolly defiantly responded, "So what? That has nothing to do with you, does it?" Tony calmly retorted, "It's not entirely unrelated. I am your ex-husband. If I had been stricter with you, maybe Chris and Anita wouldn't have had to suffer so much." Confused, Dolly demanded, "What? What exactly are you trying to say? Tell me clearly." At that moment, Tony calmly took a document out of his inner pocket and slammed it on the table. The presence of the document rapidly turned Dolly's complexion pale. The document was prominently labeled "Demand for Property Division for Adultery," and it clearly stated that she must pay $30,000 within a week. Dolly panicked and shook her head. "Impossible. This is absurd. I can't pay $30,000. I just told you. I don't have a job, I have no savings, only debts," Dolly shouted. Tony was firm in his response. "So what? If you don't have money, you need to work. Work hard and pay it back. That's the least you can do to make amends. And by the way, the compensation should be paid in full." Dolly, crying, pleaded, "But that's impossible. Mom, say something." However, Sharon coldly replied, "What do you want me to say? You were the one who cheated. Don't drag me into this. You work and pay the compensation yourself." Eventually, a fallout occurred between them, creating an unsightly scene. The behavior of Sharon and Dolly was truly distasteful, and I felt a severe lesson was necessary for them. Without harsh measures, they likely would not learn their lesson. I confidently presented a medical diagnosis from the hospital in front of both of them. "This is a medical report from the hospital. Based on this, I will sue you," I declared. Dolly was shocked. "What? You're suing us?" Sharon also panicked. "Don't be foolish. Why would you sue us?" I calmly answered, "As I mentioned before, the illness I developed may have been caused by the stress from both of you. This constitutes assault." When I specified the possible charge, Sharon and Dolly were even more shocked. Hearing that the statutory penalty for the crime could be up to 15 years in prison or a fine of up to $5,000, they began to feel real fear. Knowing the possibility of a lawsuit, they couldn't hide their disturbance. Their previous confidence vanished, and they began to tremble. In a situation where they had completely lost the will to resist or justify further, standing there with dejected expressions, I unfolded another document in front of Sharon and Dolly. At that moment, surprise and confusion mingled between them. "What is this?" Sharon asked. I began to explain in a calm tone. "This is a pledge I have prepared. You and Dolly need to abide by the commitments listed here. If there is a violation, be prepared that I won't hesitate to take legal action." The pledge contained a wide range of clauses. The pledge included not summoning me to serve them like a servant, not demanding money from my husband no matter how financially troubled they were, earning their own living by working, and repaying the money they had borrowed. Additionally, the document reminded Dolly to not forget to pay the full amount of alimony to her ex-husband, Tony. After quietly reading the entire document, Sharon and Dolly, with tears in their eyes and shaking their heads, protested, "You are cruel. It's impossible to keep such promises. Paying the alimony in full is impossible. I would have to take on more debt. It doesn't matter if you have to go into debt. Then, working diligently to pay it back is the minimum obligation required of you. You have been playing around for too long. Why not think about working seriously from now on?" Sharon and Dolly gave up all resistance to our stern words and could only hang their heads in defeat. Seeing them like this, I finally felt a sense of relief. Later, it seemed Sharon and Dolly took various jobs. They registered with an agency that introduces temporary work, such as building cleaning staff, construction site guides, and logistics center workers. They might be unable to secure regular jobs because they cannot pass interviews. Especially since Sharon is 65 years old, which is understandably a factor. Dolly also appears to be a difficult woman to manage, which is why many companies might hesitate to hire them. They are likely to continue with sporadic temporary jobs and live day-to-day. Sharon and Dolly paid off their debts and the money they had borrowed, including alimony, by taking loans. But since these loans came from loan sharks, a delay in payments could lead to serious issues. Their desperate work situation is understandable. Once, I saw Dolly working in the city. She was struggling to make ends meet. She was dressed in a uniform, wearing a helmet, and was directing traffic at a construction site. When our eyes met, she turned away in embarrassment. She should have been more assertive, but she behaved oddly. I also saw Sharon doing a part-time job stocking shelves in a supermarket. She was clearly being scolded by a younger colleague and looked very displeased. Given their coy character, it is likely that they will face problems eventually. They might struggle with workplace relationships, be forced to quit their jobs, and end up searching for new employment. I hope that Sharon and Dolly will regret their actions as they move from job to job. That is what I expect from them now. Since then, Chris and I have continued to live a simple yet happy life. We are no longer troubled by Sharon or Dolly, and we have regained our physical and mental health. As a result, we were eventually blessed with our long-awaited first child. Currently, I am on maternity leave, spending peaceful days with my baby in my belly. The baby is a girl. My goal is to raise her to be a fully fledged woman. In the process, there will be opportunities to talk about Sharon and Dolly. This is to teach her not to become like them. There have been tough times, but from now on, I plan to spend happy days with Chris and our child,